Spring fever, that's what it is. You guys are so good. These other people just succumbed to their spring fever. Sounds like it's going to be a beautiful day. I want to be outside too. Either be outside or have bad allergies. Okay, if you got the Zoom, grab it because that'll help a lot with this one. This one is about loops, so there might be some weird things in there. So just kind of focus on what you know and don't worry much about the stuff that you don't. I'm missing somebody. That's all right. Let's do this. Okay, each of these has like a little code snippet and asks you what's printed, and all the output will be on like one line to save space in the Kahoot. So, and of course the Kahoot picks scary music for you guys. Look at that, code is scary. Let's take a look at that one. It's all right. Okay, what about this code? That's why we want to do these. Practice. I don't know why it's picking such intense, scary music for you guys. I'm going to have to turn it off. We need light, happy music. Loops are fun. We're going to have to take a look at these. It's because it's on the Kahoots, it can give you this weird feeling. Okay, what's a good description of this function? So look at what the piece of code does in there, and then think of what would be a good description of that. Someone was thinking we'll put that code in here in a second and try it. Good job, Alan. Okay, what about this one? What's the value of val after this code has executed? Everybody is in agreement and wrong. We're going to have some code snippets to try. That's great. Okay, what's printed by this one? It's this evil music. Spooking you guys out. Somebody beat it. What about this one? Are the letters there important? No. What's important? How many times? 3 times for the outer loop, 3 times for the inner loop for each time of the outer loop. So 3 times 3 is how many times that'll execute, right? Helps if I give you the answer. I'm glad you're listening. Okay, so let's look at those. Good job, Alan. We started last time with PyCharm. So I want to click get results so I can make sure it's keeping track of the ones we do so I don't throw them at you again. But I will throw that one at you again. So we want to find PyCharm. Find it on your start menu. PyCharm is an IDE. So when we opened it last time, parts of it look just the same as idle, the IDE or the environment we were using before, but then parts of it look different. And IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. That means we can type our code, run our code, debug our code, and you saw with PyCharm, we could step through it in that debugger mode step by step, all because we have this environment that brings all these pieces together and lets us do that. We could type all our code in Notepad++ and then copy it, onto another folder and just run the Python command to execute our code, but it would be kind of clunky. We can use an IDE to make things smoother for us, our development process. So I'm going to close this wonderful tip and let PyCharm finish loading. Maybe. There it is. Decided to not maximize. Now, while we've got a small group here, look at your neighbor, the person that's closest to you, and make sure that PyCharm is working okay for them. Is there something that we need to configure for them to get Python working? Here's all good. Here's good, good, good. Here's looks good. Everybody okay? You need help or you're going to use Adam? You're okay with, yeah, try it, see what it's like. You're okay. Where's at PyCharm, you've got that sidebar with your library, or your folder basically with all of your Python files. Mine, of course, has my Python files in it and my Raptor files because I keep all that stuff together in one folder for the class. But I can just real easily double click over here to open something and see what it's like. Now, when we open something, we're going to see it in this middle window. Right now, I'm seeing 2 different Python files because last time I right-clicked on one of the tabs and I said that I wanted to, let me find it, split vertically. Okay, so if you split vertically, then you can have your tabs side by side like that, which helps a lot because you guys want to bring up a program that we've written in class that you know has some sort of similar characteristics to the one that you're working on, or even just to find the print statement so that you see an example of it so that you can type that in. So if you set things up vertically like that, you can look at your different code files side by side, which is really helpful. Now, you might be someone that doesn't like doing it that way. You can also split horizontally. So if you would like things split in the up and down, you can, however you would like it. You can even move your tabs around. So you can organize everything the way you want. So PyCharm gives you a lot of capabilities with all of that. Now, if I want to get rid of some of these tabs, I can just close them with the X. We want to make sure that when we go to run a program, if we use the toolbar up here, the play icon will run our program. But this drop-down list right beside it is saying what PyCharm thinks is the current program. So last time, if you remember, I went to run something and I wasn't running the one I thought. Now, another way you can do it is in the window space where your code is, you can just right-click and choose Run. And then that way, you know for sure you're running that file. So either one is fine. Now, the other thing that we did last time is we were moving kind of quickly through looking at some stuff was the debugger. We saw that the debugger let us step through the code just like that visualizer website does. So whichever way you prefer to do it, it's just going to help you to see that code execute step by step and see each line and what kind of impact it has on memory. Okay, let's do some of these. The first question we had, let me get this Kahoot up, was something like this. So I want to create a new file, and then we're going to put this loop in that code file to check our output. So to do that, I want to make sure that I'm in my folder, in this folder project window. I am using this SP19 folder in my H drive. So that's where I want to add this new file. So if you want it to be in some other folder, just click on the folder that you want to add the new file in. Then I can choose File, New, or I could right-click on my folder and choose New File. But I like this where when I right-click, I can choose New Python File. I'm going to do that because then PyCharm is getting everything set up properly for a Python file. Let's name this, let's see, we were looking at the Kahoots. I'm going to name it Kahoots Loops. And hopefully that'll jog your memory when you're looking at your folder to find some sample code. But this is just going to be a bunch of different loop syntax. Okay, so the first thing I want is to try to zoom in a little bit. If you're able to zoom in, let me know. I'm alt scrolling and control scrolling and nothing is doing anything. I'm going to search real fast because it's so tiny I don't think you guys can see it. So PyCharm increase. Oh, there it was. Font size. Settings, preferences. Control-Alt-S. It's like I can't find it any other way. And I'm going to go to the editor, general. Always fun with you guys watching me. Somewhere there should be an option. There it is. Change font size with the control mouse. That's what I want. Sorry about that. Now we should be able to see it a little better. Much better. Okay, so for this first comment, we're going to be doing a simple while loop. And in our while loop, we're going to set up a variable named x and set it equal to 6. While x is greater than 4, we're going to print that value of x, and then we're going to subtract 1 from x. So underneath that, I want you to put a comment and type something like, this loop will produce this output, and type in what your expectation is so that you can remember what you thought. What is our output going to be from that loop? First of all, we're starting out with x at 6. When we hit our while loop, is that condition going to be true? Will x be greater than 4? Yes. So we will execute our while loop. The first thing we're going to do is print x. So it's going to be valued at 6, right? Nothing's happened to change it at that point. But now we're going to subtract 1 from it. So now x is 5. We'll go back and reevaluate our while loop. Is x still greater than 4? Yes. So we'll execute our loop again and print that 5. We'll subtract 1 from x, so it'll be 4 now. Is our loop true? Our condition? No. So that'll be the end of our execution. So let's run this and make sure that our output is correct, is expected. And sure enough, we've got 6 and 5. Now, in order to facilitate things, let's add a print statement to the beginning of this. We'll print out first loop. And that way we can just keep doing that for our different loops. And we'll know when we're done with one and the next one starts. Make sure that runs with our new print statement in. There go my first loop. I got 6 and 5. So that looks good. Now let's go continue on in our loop code file. I'm going to backspace and put in a comment that this is our second loop. I'll put in a print statement to say this is our second loop. Now we're ready to put that in our code. Now for this second loop, it was a little bit more involved. This is one of those ones that as a programmer, you have to learn to focus in on what's important and not let other things distract you, because it's really easy to get distracted. We're starting out with n equal to 3. And our while loop says as long as n is greater than 0, we want to execute our loop. Now, this loop, as we look at it, is an infinite loop, isn't it? It's really never going to end. We don't have any way to make it end. So when we print out what kind of output we think it's going to have, we're just going to start and then kind of go to a good point. Because if we're taking a test or something like that where we see a question like this, we usually have some multiple choice answers to choose from because everything is not perfect for sure. So our while loop is while n is greater than 0. Since we started with n is 3, it's just going to stay greater than 0. Now we do have an if statement. If n is 5, we're going to set n equal to -99. So in my mind, I see this programmer was planning on trying to end this loop when n got to -99, but that hasn't been done correctly yet, right? So we're going to have to deal with what's left here. Now I want to backspace again because I want this print statement to be outside of the if statement. We're going to print the value of n. Then we're going to add 1 to n. So now let's go ahead and write down what you think your expected output is going to be. And just like the Kahoots, you can stop when it gets to -99. Now you've got the power. If you've got your projections in, go ahead and run it and see if you have it correct. The first number that's going to print out is going to be what? 3. Because we started out with our variable n equal to 3, and we didn't do anything to change that value before that print statement. So we know that's going to be our first output value. So I go 3 and 4, and then when we add 1 to n and it becomes 5, our if statement changes it to -99 before the print statement can happen. Does that make sense to everybody? Does that one look good? Let's try a third one. Our third loop will print third loop. Just want it to where when you look at these kinds of things, like, oh, this is just no big deal to me. We started out in this one with a variable called new underscore s equal to an empty string. And then we have this for loop that says for c in s, new underscore s equals c plus new underscore s. Now this one was set up kind of as a function, so it's kind of unfair to you in Kahoots. Let's change it a little bit and give new s a value. We'll just give it any sort of value. And that might make the lines of code make more sense. Okay, so that's it. What is the expected output? Do you think it's going to work right? What in the world is that going to do? At this point, we don't really have any expected output, do we? So it's wrong in many ways. Let's print out the value of new s after our loop. So I've changed things a little bit from the Kahoots. So I want to make sure that we are getting an output. Now s, sorry, let's make s value, and new s should be empty. That's where I've got this messed up. That makes more sense, I hope. So if I looked at this one the first time through my for loop, the character C is going to be the first letter in our string S. So the first time through that loop, C would be this letter V. So I would move that to our new S output. And then we would add the current value of new S to our output. Well, right now new S is empty, so that would be just V. Now the next time that the loop executes, C is going to be equal to the letter A. So I'll be adding the letter A to, or putting the letter A, sorry, in our new S. And then when we add the value of new S, do we have anything there? Does this work at all? Let's run it. We got to do some debugging. There it is. So how does it work? Well, it takes the value of new S when we start this line of code, which would be the letter V, and adds it to the C. And then it replaces new S with that new content. So you can kind of think of it as doing this half of the assignment statement and then updating the variable. So try that one with some different things. Gives us a lot of flexibilities. There's also like a string.reverse function in Python, so you can reverse it without having to do that kind of looping. But it's very powerful. Okay, so this one is, where are we? Is that our third loop? Yep, so this would be our fourth loop. And in this loop, we had a couple of these. We have a nested for loop that's running based off a string. And again, we're going to assume that the value of val is being printed out here. That's what we were trying to figure out. What is the value of val in this one? So we're going to start out with val equal to 0. Our outer for loop says we want to set up a control variable I. We want to use I while it's in the values A and B. Within that for loop, we want an internal for loop that uses a control variable J. And we want to run our loop while J is in the set of C and D. Within our loop, the only thing we're going to do is add to our val variable. Then we're going to backspace all the way over and print our val variable. Now for this one, what is the expected output? What you're looking for really is how many times is this line of code going to get executed? So we're going to run our outer loop twice, once for the value of A, once for the value of B. For each of those executions of our outer loop, we will execute our inner loop twice, once for the value of C and once for the value of D. So altogether, we'll add to our val variable 4 times. Let's run it and make sure down here in my fourth loop I have the value 4. Let's use the debugger on this one. To use our debugger, we take our mouse over here to this sidebar area where the line numbers are, and we're looking in this blank gray area. And I want to set a breakpoint, a place for the debugger to break execution and give control to us here at line 36. So I'm just going to click there to put that red dot in, and that's going to set my breakpoint. Now we could also right click on that line of code somewhere in there you would think you could set a breakpoint. I don't see one. It might just be because we already have one set. But that works. So now that we have our breakpoint set, remember we don't want to just run the program. We want to debug it. So we're going to use the little bug icon. Make sure that we're set to the correct program to debug. Okay, so in my code, PyCharm, in the Python interpreter, executed all my lines of code up to this one. If I looked at the console output over here, I would see that I'm up to my fourth loop printout has already happened. Okay, so all of the other loops have executed. I'm sitting now at this line of code, and it's just waiting for me to tell it what to do. Here's the value of all my variables in the program. And we're looking for our variable val, because that's the one we care about in this particular loop. So we saw last time that we want to use the toolbars down here in this debugger window to control our debug session. We want to step into our code, and if we use the step into function with F7, we'll see all the Python system code. We don't really want to do that, so we're going to use the next one over that says step into my code. Now, when we do that, the interpreter will execute our outer for loop. Let's see what happens. It did, and if you look at the screen up here, you can see it set the variable I to the value of A. It's showing us that up there, as well as showing us down here in our variable area that I is equal to A. Now we're sitting at our inner for loop ready to execute it. So I'm going to do step into my code, and we should be to the line where we're adding to our val variable. We'll add to it, and we'll go back to our inner for loop, and now our value of J will be changed to D, and we'll add to val again. We'll check our inner for loop one more time, and it'll figure out that it's done. So it'll return to the outer for loop. Change the value of I to our second value, and then it'll execute that inner for loop again. So use that debugger to get a good feel for what's happening with your code and what lines of code are being executed and how your variables are changing. Remember, as a programmer, you probably would never intentionally put a bug in a program. So they're really hard to find, because if you would have known there was a bug there, you wouldn't have put it there, right? So it's kind of like finding your keys. You know, you can look and look and look for your keys. Where do you always find them? The last place you look, because you quit looking once you find them. That's how a bug in a program is. If you knew where the bug was, you would fix it. Just like if you knew where your keys were, they wouldn't be lost. So you're going to have a hard time finding that bug because it's not something that you think should be there. You wrote that code very carefully, and you're absolutely sure it should work. So when it doesn't work, having a debugger tool like this is so important, because you can see what's happening and you can see your variables and be like, oh, geez, I didn't realize that one is still set this other way, and so that's causing this problem in my code. So it's really important for us to be able to look at debugging tools like that. All right, let's look at this one. In this one, we are starting out with a valid loop, so it's not going to be a problem like that one loop was, where it was going to be an infinite loop. This one is real quick. We're just setting an X variable and using it in a while loop. So I think this one is our fifth loop. And this might seem like a lot of loops, but they'll help you. I'm going to set X equal to 6 while X is greater than 4. I'm going to subtract 1 from X and print it. Now, what's your expected output? As you look at it, be thinking about what the first number that's going to print out will be. Because remember, a lot of times with a multiple choice test, that's going to be enough to identify the correct answer, right? So is the first time X prints, is it going to be 6? No, why not? Because we've already subtracted 1 from it. So the very first time it prints, it will be 5. So make sure your output is what you've expected. Notice that we get the value of 4 printed out, even though the value of 4 doesn't satisfy our loop condition. That's because, again, we're printing the value of X after it's been updated in our loop body. So notice how much of a difference that makes in our output as to whether our variable is updated before or after it's printed, or whatever it is that we're going to do to it. The last one that we had, because there were 6 loops, this one is a lot like one of our previous ones. Again, we're setting val to 0. We're going to have an outer for loop for I in the values ABC, an inner loop for J in the values DEF, and we're going to add a val. Now, before you guys start thinking about what your expected output is going to be, let's look at some things that can be confusing to you. First of all, in our for loops, we're using strings, and we're not printing out anything about them, are we? So that can make it confusing to look at, because what in the world are you doing? Well, sometimes we need to count how many letters are in a name or something like that. Also, it's important for you to start realizing how these things aren't necessarily related to each other in the loop. Just because we're using these letters to control our loop doesn't mean we have to do anything with those letters in our loop body. We're doing completely different stuff in our loop body here and updating our numeric variable. So we always have to really focus on what's happening in each area. So how many times is this loop going to execute? 3 times 3, right? So 9 times. So what's our value of val going to be? Should be 9. Let's print it and be sure. So we'll just do a debug print there. Make sure we get the right thing. Yep, we got 9. So great practicing. We need to do a couple more to make sure that you have some good sample code, and then we'll go to that lab activity. So I want to create one more Python file. If everybody's good with that one, make sure to save it. It almost seems like PyCharm is auto-saving, doesn't it? It does have a save all function. We'll have to watch that, because sometimes we don't like things to automatically save. But I do want to create a new Python file. And this one is going to be a sum loop. Bless you. So the first thing we want to do in this program is prompt the user for a number. And we're going to add it to a sum. So we're going to need some variables here. Let's say we'll need the number that the user's going to type in. We'll need the sum of all of the numbers that they type in. So go ahead and type in the statement, the line of code that you need to prompt the user to input a number and save that in your number variable. So I'm going to use that input statement. Please enter a number. And I want to convert that to an integer, right? So I'll wrap that within the int function. Now, that's great. We could take the number that they enter and just, add it to our sum, but we need more than one number. So it would be nice if we did this in some sort of loop where we kept asking the user for a number, and then we could add all of these numbers to our total, because this way we're just getting one. That's not going to give us much of a total. So it would be good then to decide how we're going to control that loop. Are we just going to say while true and make the user break out of the program when they're done? That probably wouldn't be too glamorous for them. We don't want to have to tell them, oh, press Control-C to break out and kill Python when you're done. We want to give them some sort of control over it. So it would be nice if we had them enter some sort of special value. Let's say 0 to exit. How about we do like that Cahoots was doing, and we'll say -99. How's that? I changed my mind. Sometimes I can do that, sometimes I can't, but right now I can. So I want to loop then until the number equals 99. So let's put a while statement there. While number not How do we do that in Python? How do we say not in if statement? The what? The exclamation equals? Is that not equals? I was going to do that. And I thought, oh, I should ask you guys. So while our number is not equal to -99, we're going to keep asking them for a number. And I think just to be sure that I've got everything right, I'm going to prompt them for this number before I go into the while loop. And then that way, if they don't really want to use the program, it was kind of an accident, they could just type -99 at the very beginning, and we would never even go into the loop. So that should work. And then if I prompt them for the number before the loop starts, I'm going to have to prompt them for a new number is the very last thing in my loop. So I'm going to put a comment there. Prompt for a new number at the end of the loop body. And we'll put a comment up here. Prompt for first number before loop begins. So now within our loop, let's print out the number. Let me move this out of the way down here. And of course, we've got to convert that number to a string to print it out. And then let's add it to our sum. So on these lines of code, we can put some comments. We'll say this one is displaying the number they entered. And then our next line of code is adding to our sum. Whenever we add to a sum variable like this, we call it an accumulator, right? Because it's accumulating all of these numbers that are being typed in. Now, that should take care of everything. After we prompt for the user's next number, I'm going to backspace to get out of that while loop and print out what the total sum was. And of course, I need to convert the sum to a string to be able to print it. So let's run that. I got my console too small. Now, in your console area, oh yeah, it's letting me control scroll in it too. So in your console area, first of all, I say I didn't put a space at the end of that prompt. I need to fix that. But I'll do a number. Let's try 4. It says you entered number 4. That's true. Please enter a number. I'll do 6. Okay. Now I want to try -99 and make sure that it stops our loop. It did. And it says the total of all of the numbers is 10, which looks correct. Okay, so how is everybody's doing? Now I'm going to put my space here after my word exit. Is everybody's working? Okay? Okay. So how then could we add something to this program? Let me zoom out just a little bit. We've got our program here that's calculating a sum of all of these numbers. How could we add something to also count how many numbers were input? Would we need a variable to hold that data? We would not have any other way to keep track of it if we didn't, right? So we could set up a count. Then what would we need to do with that? Should I update it like outside of the loop or inside of the loop? What do you think? If I want to count every number that gets entered, where should I count every number? At the end? Isn't that just going to give me 1? Where am I getting every number? Are we getting every number at the beginning or the end? Are we getting every number within our loop?
Put it like the very beginning of the loop.
the very beginning of our loop. We could do that. I'll do count plus equal 1. And that shortcut, remember, is exactly the same as saying count equal count plus 1, that shortcut statement. And we have to do that within our loop because it's in our loop that we're getting each number. So always think about where this logic is happening. Where is this logic happening? Inside our loop. We're asking for a number. They're typing in a number. We count that number and we add that number to our sum. So let's see if that gives us some accurate results. Let's add a new print statement at the end and say something about, I think I'll put the numbers first, str count numbers were entered. So now, because we're adding to our count every time they give us a number, we should be keeping track of how many numbers they gave us. So I'm going to start out down here. Let's see, I've got to zoom each time. That's okay. So I'll do 4 and 5. And then I'll do my negative 99. And I see that my total is 9, which is correct, and 2 numbers were entered. Does that look right? Are you getting it? Getting it? Getting it? So now how could we calculate an average? Would we need to do that every time we got a new number? Or just at the end when we had the total and the count? At the end? Yeah, because think about where your data is when it's available to you, the information that you need. And to calculate the average, we would have to have the total of all of the numbers summed up and the count before we would be able to calculate that. So yeah, we'd want to put it at the very end. So we can add another print statement for that. And we could create a variable if we wanted to. Or we can do the math within our print statement. So I'll say the average of the numbers was, is, I want to stay in the same tense. And then I want to add in a string, but the string I want is going to be the sum of our numbers divided by the count of how many numbers we had. Okay, so I'm going to enter 4 and 6. I think I'll enter a few more. I'll do, I want the average to come out to something that has a decimal place. So let me stick a 7 in there. I might have to try again because math is not my thing this morning. All right, that looks good. I'm going to try my negative 99. Ah, there we go. And I did get a decimal place, and Python took care of it. Everything looks good. So now I'm seeing what my total was of all the numbers, that there were 3 numbers that were added, and what the average is. So is everybody's working okay? We want it to work. So this is stuff that's common things that we have to do as programmers. So you want to keep this and think about it, step through it using the debugger. We could use a for loop for this, where we said something about for I, whatever, but it wouldn't be as logical. is using a while loop for this. So we want to use a while loop for situations like this where we really don't know how many times we're going to run the loop. It's in the control of our user. Where our for loop is more for things that are for a specific number of times, like our range 0, 10. We know we want to do it 10 times. So the for loop is more built for things like that. So if you feel like you're trying to squeeze a square peg into a round hole, you might want to switch the type of loop you're using. But never in a million years is that going to fix your program. You know, I mean, you can't say the program's not working with a for loop, make it a while loop. The logic is the problem. What's wrong with that for loop? What's wrong with that while loop? Because you can use either one for just about anything. Okay, so no questions with it if everybody feels pretty clear with that one. If you had trouble with some of the assignment, the sum of squares, let me know so we can get you figured out. And take this one and think about it. How could you use that information for this one? This one's very different though. So definitely can help you with that one because it can be kind of challenging to people. Now another one that's challenging for people, but everybody always gets it, is the one that we're going to do today. And the reason that this one is set as a lab is because we're going to do it in class. So in our Canvas scheme of things, if it says the word lab, that means usually to me that we're going to do it in class. I tried to be consistent that way, but we don't have as many of the labs, so it can be hard to know. So some of our people that are gone today are going to be working on it on their own. So you might have to help them a little bit when they come back. We have some people that are in all sorts of different places today. That girl back there's in Alaska. That sounds cold. I don't know. Is it colder in Alaska? Or? It was 2 when I was in Canada. It was what? It was 2 when I was in Canada. 2 when you were in Canada? I don't know what it's like there. But different. Okay, so this is the Chapter 6 Programming Challenge 5 from your textbook. I'll bring the textbook up online and bring it up on the screen, so don't worry if you don't have your textbook with you. And this page number might be off just a little bit because we have that new textbook version, so we'll find it and make sure we can all locate it. Now, what this assignment is going to be is you're going to ask for someone's name, and then you're going to print out their name with a border around it. One of the examples we looked at from our textbook in the PowerPoint last time was very similar. I know you guys start wanting to throw tomatoes at me when I say things are similar, but that's what we have to do as programmers, is find things that are close. Oh, darn, you guys can't get to the book. Let's see. Oh, you silly thing, it did. It quit letting me have it. I love it when it does that right there when we need it. Let me fix it. I think I want the one that's not fuzzy. This thing almost has 7 billion places to go. So we'd have to find somebody that has a book. We'll get it up here on the screen for you while I figure out how to get my online access back. Now, what we want to do is we're going to prompt for the name. Then we're going to ask them for a special character that they want to use for their border. So their border character. And then we're going to ask them if they want a full border or a partial border. And then based on their input, we're going to print it out. So say I put in as my border character an asterisk, and I say I want a full border. my name should print out, and there should be 2 asterisks before it, 2 asterisks after it, with a space in between. And then there should be a row of asterisks under my name that matches exactly, and a row above. That would be the full border. If they say they want the partial border, then you would just print this bottom one. Without the extra stuff. So just border their name. Now, the things that we've looked at, we saw that there was a length of function. Our book said all of these programming languages have this length of function. Do we have that function in Python? Let's check. Python length of function. Oh, we do, but it's called len. So if I type in my code, give me the length of this variable name, the results returned will be how many letters are in the contents of that variable. So for mine, if the contents of name were Renee, the results of running this command would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Would tell me how long that is. So then I could use that number to figure out how many asterisks I need to print. Okay, it's going to take you guys some time. I'm going to be finding the book while you guys are getting started. I think that we're going to do, because of the way things are here, we're going to do mostly groups of, how do we want to, some of you, I would like to get further away, but then I know you all are better when you're at your own desk. So let's do, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to split you up. Okay, I want you two, so you two are together. I'm going to kind of do corners here. Okay. And then I want you. And then we're going to do what? Let me think here. I'm trying to get people that will be a good math as far as skill level. You guys all have pretty good skills. That's good too. I guess. You guys are pretty convenient to each other. And then you two, I'll lay you two together. So you're good. And then I'm going to drag you up here to the front and put you together. And then I'll put you two together. So you two have to move the furthest side. All right, you got somebody? Now introduce yourselves to each other. Get situated with thinking about how you're going to do this. How you want to share code and things like that. That's not what I want. Okay, and I'm going to find the textbook, and don't worry, I'll get the example up here so that you can see it. Start thinking about how you want to solve this problem. So remember, you don't want to start with an empty screen in front of you to try to start coding. Start thinking about how you're going to handle this. Let's see, we're going to have to figure out how long the name is to do something. Did I leave you without a partner? What? How could I do that? That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. I guess I'll let you work with these guys then, put your all together. So what are we going to do to solve this problem? How are you going to start? Don't worry about typing the code until you've got something scratched out. What do we need to do? Maybe pseudocode. Let me fight this silly thing.
You want us to do this separately or on the same computer?
Same computer, however you guys want to do it. So you're going to each turn it in separately to Canvas, but you'll turn in the exact same thing. Okay?
Do you want us to do it in PyCharm or PyCharm?
Doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to use. There it is. Okay, it's up on the screen, but there's really not a lot more information than what we talked about already. So, but that's it.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit?
Hmm?
Is it possible for you to zoom in on that? Okay. Thank you.
Is that better? Can you read it? Okay.
I think that
That's okay. Just tell me and I'll always try to zoom. Yeah, it's hard to see that thing too.